Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to your math lesson for today. Today we are focusing on lesson 18, which is comparing fractions and whole numbers on a number line by reasoning about their distance from 0. So we're going to do this application problem together. So third grade students are growing peppers. The student with the largest pepper wins the Green Thumb Award. Jackson's pepper measured 3 inches long. Drew's measured 10/4 inches long. Who won the award? Draw a number line to help prove your answer. So if you don't have one already, please grab a piece of paper and a pencil and pause this video to solve this problem. We always want to make sure that we underline the important parts or circle the important information. So we know that Jackson's pepper measured 3 inches long. Okay, so Jackson's measured 3 inches long, and Drew's measured 10/4 inches long. All right, so we also want to know who's winning, but we're wondering whether it's the longest. Okay, so who has the longest pepper? All right, so make sure you draw your number line because it's telling you to draw a number line to help prove your answer. So pause the video and draw your number line. Okay, you should have something like this where you start with 0. We have our inches here. We have 1 inch, 2 inches, and 3 inches. All right, we know that Jackson's pepper measured 3 inches long. So this one is Jackson. And we know that Drew's pepper measured 10/4 inches long. So who won the award? We are looking to see who had the longest one. Well, if you're looking from 0, we have this and this. So we're looking which is longer. The 3 is further away from the 0, therefore it is longer. So Jackson won the award since 3 inches is greater than 10/4 inches. All right, so let's do some practice. If I had a fraction, let's do 1/3. All right, and I'm going to find this on my number line. I know that this is 0, so I'm going to make this 1, all right? And I'm going to break this up into thirds. So I'm going to go 1, 2 to make thirds. And this would be 1/3, all right? And if I had, let's say, 2/5, okay? Let's find 2/5. I'm going to use the same number line, but I'm actually going to break it up, all right? I know that I've got fifths like here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that gives me fifths, okay? So if I have 2/5, this is 1/5 and 1/5, and this is 2/5. So if I am looking at the distance from 0, so from this point, I notice that 2/5 is further away from 0. See that it goes all the way over here, whereas the 1/3 only goes to here. Okay, therefore, I know that 2/5 is greater than 1/3. Or I could say 1/3 is less than 2/5. Now you try. Which is greater, 10/3 or 4? If you're using this number line, you know that your whole number at the end is going to be 4. Okay? For me, what I would do first is add my whole numbers in first. So I know that I'm missing 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I have 4. Go ahead and try to break this number line. You're going to partition this number line into your fraction to see which is larger or which is greater, 10/3 or 4. You should have broken up each whole number into thirds, because if you see up here, you have 10/3. Okay, as you can see, I have labeled every fraction on my number line, and I've put boxes over each hole. So if I'm looking, I'm going to look for 10/3. Okay, and I notice that 10/3 is right here. Okay, and I'm going to look for 4. Well, I know that 4 is right here, which is 12/3. Okay, now if I'm using 0 to help me figure out which is closer to 0 or which is further from 0, I'm going to go ahead and use 0 here. And I'm going to draw my line. There's 10/3 and do it again. And here's 12/3. Which is further away? 4. Therefore, 4 is greater than 10/3. Or if you're reading this number sentence, you would say 10/3 is less than 4. Okay, here's another one for you to try. 9/3 and 3. Figure out which is greater or which is less. Pause the video to do your math. As you can see, I've partitioned my number line with my whole number. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. And now I've divided each whole number into thirds. And I know that because I have thirds on the bottom of my 9/3. Okay, as you can see, I have now put my fractions, I've labeled my number line with my fractions. And the question is 9/3 and 3. Well, if I'm looking from the distance from 0, here is 9/3, and oh, look at that, 3 is in the same spot. So is 9/3 greater than 3, or is 9/3 less than 3? Trick question, it's equal. That's your key word for today, trick question. Keywords, I should say, because there's 2. Trick question. All right, so I want us to go back and think back to our application problem. And what if we pretended that we measured giant peppers with yards instead of inches? So one pepper measured 3 yards long and the other measured 10 yards long. So how would the comparison of the fraction change if we used yards rather than inches? This was the number line we used for our application problem. And if we've changed this to yards, does 10/4 yards change for, distance-wise between 3 yards? Take a moment and think about that. If you said that they wouldn't change, that the comparison wouldn't change between the fractions, then you're correct. Because even though an inch is way smaller than a yard, if you have 10/4 yards and 3 yards, 3 yards is still greater than 10/4 yards. All right, so we're going to do a quick practice with a number line and comparing the two fractions with the distance closest to 0. Okay, so you notice here that I've got 1/3 and 2/3. So I have to break up my number line into thirds. So I'm going to break it up into thirds. Great. And this becomes 1/3 and this is 2/3. Well, which is closest to 0? Well, I can tell you that 1 is closer to 0. And I'm making sure that I'm answering this question correctly because it says circle the fraction with the distance closest to 0. Okay, so I have circled the fraction. And now I'm going to compare using greater than, less than, or equal to. So I know that 2/3 is greater than 1/3. So 1/3 is less than 2/3. Okay, and do it again. This time, though, it's asking for 1/4 and 1/8. So I'm going to have to break up my number line 2 different ways. So first, I'm going to start with 4ths. Now, this is an even number, so I know that I can start in the middle and break it up in half either way. Okay, this becomes 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. Okay, we know that this would be 0/4 and 4/4. Okay, and now I have to break it up in eighths. So I'm actually going to go ahead and change my color so that you can see this better. But I'm going to start in the middle because 8 is still an even number. So I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to break it up. And I know that if I make it up this way, this gives me eighths. So just cut each one in half. If I cut the fourths in half, then I have eighths. All right, and so I'm going to find 1/8 and 2/8. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and circle the fraction with the distance closest to 0. So let me go ahead and circle that. I know that 1/8 is closer to 0 than 1/4. So therefore, 1/4 is greater than 1/8. Okay, this will be our last problem together before you go on to your classwork. All right, Liz and Jay each have a piece of string. Liz's string is 4/6 yard long, and Jay's string is 5/7 yard long. Whose string is longer? Draw a number line to model the length of both sides. Explain the comparison using pictures, numbers, and words. Okay, well, it's telling us right here that we need to draw a number line to model the length of both strings. See that both? That's important. So I know that Liz's is 4/6 yard and Jay's is 5/7 yard. So let's go ahead and draw Liz's first. Okay, and I'm going to label this Liz because it's important that I am remembering who I'm drawing first. Okay, so I'm going to start with 0 because that's what we're working with, distance to 0. And I have to find 4/6. Okay, so this will be 1, and I'm going to break up my number line into 6. Exactly. 6 is a even number, so I'm going to start in the middle, and now I have 2, and I'm going to break it up. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so break it up into thirds on either side. Excellent. Now I've got 1/6, 2/6, and 5/6. Okay. I'm going to go ahead, just like we did in the problem before. I'm going to go ahead and circle where Liz's is. She's at 4/6. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and draw the exact same number line. Okay. And starting with 0 and finishing with 1. However, this is Jay's string, right? And he 5/7 yards. All right. And so I'm going to break this up into sevenths. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is going to be, now I have 2 parts, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7. Okay. Doesn't have to be exactly equal. Just try your best. All right. And now I'm going to label them. Right. So now I know that I have 5/7. Jay's string is 5/7. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that. And now I'm going to figure out which is the further distance to 0. Well, if Liz is only up to here, and that's her distance, and Jay is all the way to here, and that's his distance, whose string is longer? Correct. Since Liz's string is 4/6 yards and Jay's string is 5/7 yards, 4/6 is closer to 0 than 5/7. Therefore, Jay's string is longer. All right, so now you're going to go back and you're going to do your classwork for today. All right, remember that you are comparing fractions with whole and whole numbers on the number line by reasoning their distance from 0. Enjoy!